Welcome into another edition of Mile High Hockey. Mike and Will with you as always. And everyone, this is a monster show because the Avalanche have traded Mikko Rantanen. Since the last time we chatted with you, Martin Nichas and Jack Drury are in. Mikko Rantanen is out. And Mike, there is so much to unpack to this story. It's a monster trade, maybe the biggest outside of Patrick Waugh in Colorado Avalanche history.
It's a monster. We've been talking about the idea that if you feel like as an Avalanche organization you can't re-sign Mikko, what do? We've discussed the ideas of, hey, maybe you play it all out, go for one last run together, and if he walks, he walks. I always felt that if you just ultimately felt that you couldn't trade him or couldn't sign him, you had to trade him. As uncomfortable as it might be, they did it. I think all things considered, they got a pretty good deal in return, and they now have the wiggle room to go out and make some more moves. I'm going to hold them to that. I'm going to expect them to continue to be aggressive and go out and still be able to build a team that can compete for a Stanley Cup. I don't think that we should be looking at this move as a reason to say that, okay, the Avs are stepping back for this year. I don't think they think that way over there, and I don't think we should think that way as fans.
Well, and I think it would be a huge disservice when you have Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar on the roster to not be pursuing Stanley Cups. Best player on earth, best defenseman on earth, another top 5 player on earth. The problem is they traded a top 10 player on this planet when they moved Mikko Rantanen. So much to unpack here. Let's start with the timing, though, because the timing is what I have the biggest problem with, Mike. You traded him on January 24th when the trade deadline is March 7th. You had 6 more weeks to negotiate this deal. You've got Mikko Rantanen telling Peter Baugh from The Athletic that he didn't think, quote, they were in a rush. He was shocked when Chris MacFarland called him to his hotel room in Boston on Friday night and told him he had been traded. The timing to me is what I'm most frustrated by. Feels like the Avs just sort of put their hands up, said it's not going to happen, and pulled the trigger 6 weeks too early. I could live with this a lot more on March 6th or 7th than I could on January 24th.
Well, I guess I'm going to defend the Avs here from this standpoint. Once you have internally decided this is the number, this is the line we're not going to cross with Mikko Rantanen, we don't think he's worth more than Nathan MacKinnon. We definitely don't think he's going to be worth more than what Cale Makar is going to be making in a couple of years. Once you've arrived at that point, you're not going to budge. And if Mikko Rantanen, even if, and I believe there's some truth to the idea that Mikko might have been willing to take a little bit less than market value. Leon Draisaitl's $14 million per year. That maybe he would have been open to taking $13 million, maybe the high 12s. But the problem is there was a number he was not going to go below, and it didn't match. And so once you kind of got and you understood the writings on the wall that there's just not going to be any more movement made that's going to lead us to getting to that magic number. If Carolina, and by all reports that the Avs and Carolina have been working on this deal for multiple weeks, you can't wait. I mean, at some point you gotta make the deal.
Okay, but a few things here. First of all, Nathan MacKinnon told reporters in Boston he does not care if he makes less than Mikko Rantanen. He said money's not on his mind at all. He said Cale Makar may get $20 million one day. So doesn't that sort of throw out the narrative that the Avs couldn't pay Mikko Rantanen more than Nathan MacKinnon? We heard from the horse's mouth himself he didn't care about it.
Right.
If Mikko was willing to come down to 13, that significant cut he was willing to take, why couldn't the Avs do that? Especially because 29 didn't care, and that was a narrative that had been floated and was false.
And Will, I agree with you. I think the Avalanche were short-sighted. I've heard so much over the last couple of days about, the salary cap and, oh, woe is us. We can't spend that much money on 3 players and be that top-heavy. Look, the Cale Makar extension, when it comes, is still 2 years away. I went back and looked at contracts that are going to be expiring over the next couple of years. And they're, guys like Josh Manson, Samuel Girard, Ross Colton. I mean, these are deals that are going to be really, you could free up some $26.5 million
big number
before you even have to re-sign Cale Makar. That's 2 years away. It almost makes it sound like people are saying, well, Cale's up at the end of the year. It's 2 more years. 2 more years of contracts coming off the books, 2 more years of the cap going up. Trust me, by the time that Cale Makar gets his extension, there are going to be several more players making the kind of money that you would be paying Mikko Rantanen, and they'd be lesser players than Mikko. So I don't quite agree with this idea that you can't pay 3 players for something that is still 2 years off from having to carry 3 big contracts.
I totally agree with that. And let's talk about the reactions that the Avs had, because MacKinnon was stunned. He was shocked. He said never in a million years did he think this would happen. Jared Bednar talked about losing his good friend. Said, hey, we got a couple good players, but there's no other way to slice it. We lost Mikko Rantanen. I think this blindsided the team. I worry about the chemistry in the locker room. And Nathan MacKinnon said 2 different times, you'll have to ask Chris MacFarland and Joe Sakic why they did this. I think there's this notion among Avs fans, oh, MacKinnon's always involved. Bednar's always involved. Unless they're great actors, Mike, I think this was done in a cloak of secrecy. And I don't think that was a good way to operate business by Chris MacFarland. I think he blindsided his team.
Well, the good news is, Will, is that you still have almost half a season of regular season games, plus a break in between with the Four Nations face-off to develop some chemistry to allow the sting of this trade to sort of ease a little bit. We do expect more players to come on board.
There better be.
Before the trade
deadline.
There
better be. That's all I'm saying.
Well, yes, I would, and they better get Val Nichushkin back healthy. So I'm not just discounting the Avs' chances of being able to be a Stanley Cup contender. I still think they can be, but make no mistake. To just sort of whistle past the graveyard and say, hey, losing Mikko Rantanen, we got a lot in return. Necas is a better player than everybody. I mean, I literally have heard from folks who have made it in just a couple of days out to be that Necas is every bit as good or maybe even better than Mikko Rantanen, that he brings things that even Mikko can't bring. Okay, I mean, pump the brakes on that a little bit, okay? Please. I mean, I'm willing to be optimistic, but let's not get out of hand.
Well, let me run some numbers by you, because it's just a joke, right? Mikko Rantanen had 104 points last year. Martin Necas had 53, and Jack Drury had 27, okay? In the 2022-23 season, Mikko Rantanen tallied 55 goals. Necas' career high is 28, and for Jack Drury, it's 8. So don't tell me this dude's better than Mikko Rantanen when his career high in goals is 28 and Mikko's is 55. Mikko has doubled him up in that category, just like he doubled him up in points last year. I understand he was having a little better year this year in Carolina, good 3 months. But you're right, the just whistle while you go by the graveyard thing, absolute irresponsible take by some Avs fans who just want it to be puppies and roses all the time.
All right, then what about the idea that MacKinnon was strictly a beneficiary of playing with Nathan MacKinnon?
Or Rantanen was a beneficiary.
Excuse me. Yeah. Rantanen was I apologize.
Yeah.
Rantanen was simply a beneficiary playing with MacKinnon.
You don't score 55 goals just because you play with Nathan MacKinnon.
And Necas can get the same kind of bump.
When Necas scores 55 goals in a season, I'll eat crow. But until I see that with my own eyes, I'm not going to do it, because I think we're dismissing how impressive back-to-back 100-point seasons is and 55 goals in a season. Again, I'm not rooting against Necas. That's what I think people have to be clear about. We just don't know him. It's like, say you have a buddy who dates a girl for 8 years, or Mikko's here 10 years. Next time you go on a double date, it's a new girl. You love the old one. What, are you just supposed to embrace her and give her a hug and tell her how great she is? You don't know anything about her. And by the way, you're mad your buddy broke up with the other girl. You like that analogy?
I love that analogy. And can I say one last thing? Because the other argument I've heard from Avs fans is that, and from the Avs, is that we had to improve our depth. Well, wait a minute now.
You traded 1 for 2.
But here's the thing.
You can get 5 players back.
Over the last couple of years, I mean, the Avs have been so active, right? So busy. They've made a flurry of moves. They've signed guys. They've traded for guys. They've given up top prospects for guys. And after all those moves, after a lot of very rich contracts have been handed out, you're still sitting here a couple years later saying, if you're Chris MacFarland, kind of throwing up your hands like, what are we to do? We don't have enough roster depth. Come on, man. Whose fault is that?
Who made the
Whose
mess?
responsibility is that? Who made that mess? And now you're sitting back saying, oh, what are we going to do? We got no depth, and so we got to trade Mikko Rantanen. I just wish that in this whole conversation about the Mikko Rantanen trade, that there was a little bit more of a critique and criticism of the Avs and specifically Chris MacFarland's role in putting the Avs into this position where they had to trade Mikko Rantanen. Some of the stuff I understand, but I don't think that there's been enough critique, and there's been simply a lot of, hey, Mikko was just simply a beneficiary of Nathan MacKinnon. He's gone. Now, hallelujah, we have roster flexibility, cap flexibility, and now we can really go out and build this hockey team. Thanks, Mikko, but we're really not going to miss you. I think there's been a lot of that over the last couple of days, and I think that's unfair to Mikko, and I don't think that that's a fair critique and criticism of how the Avalanche have conducted business the last couple of years.
I think that's really well said. And Chris MacFarland has bet his legacy on this trade, in my opinion, because picking Nichushkin over Kadri was a big deal. Trading Byram for Mittelstadt was a big deal. Having the Gabe Landeskog situation linger for 3 years is a big deal. This is the biggest. This is the biggest of his tenure. Again, betting his legacy in my eyes on this, and we'll see how it works out. We'll see if other moves are coming as well. Mike, fascinating time to be an Avs fan. Absolutely fascinating. And, you know, we're running out of time here, but to me, this is one of those trades, like Nolan Arenado, not like Carmelo Anthony, Denver sports fans will remember for literally years, if not decades.
Real quick,
to come.
I mean, the sky isn't falling for the Avs. Let's be clear about that. But let's not also just gloss over this by saying
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal for sure. All right, Avs and Islanders tonight. The hockey almost feels secondary. Mike and I will come talk about it on Thursday, and I'm sure we'll talk more about the Mikko Rantanen trade because it's the biggest Avs story we've had in quite some time. We will catch you in a couple of days.